Thanks for tuning in to Luminary Sounds. I'm your musical artist, Junior Leto.
I'm your musical enthusiast, Francois the Great.
And creative fanatic, Kate Don't Play.
And listen, we have someone really special here today.
Yes,
Who do we have
We
tonight?
have the mayor of, I know, right? The mayor of Oxnard, Tim Flynn, is here.
Yes.
Now listen.
Yes.
What you guys don't know, before I give him the platform here, I know he's been knocking on doors every day because that's how I met him. Taking out my trash on Saturday.
Taking out your trash.
Taking out my trash. That's how it happened. I was saving the secret. All of a sudden, I see a nice gentleman come up. Hey, I want you to vote for me for mayor. For district VC. Yeah.
Supervisor.
But he introduced himself as a mayor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was like, this is interesting because this man is literally door to door. I went to Walmart, half an hour, came back. He's 3 blocks over.
Wow.
Still knocking on doors.
Still knocking on
Still
doors.
knocking on doors.
Dedication.
Dedication.
So Tim, tell me how did you get that knocking on doors? Like, where did that come from?
Well, that's a great question. You know, it started actually with my dad, and my dad in 1972 was actually a candidate for the very same office that I'm running for now.
John Flynn.
John Flynn. And my dad literally walked the whole town, the whole city. It was more of a town than a city in 1972. But that kind of became his hallmark, his trademark, which was walking door to door. And by the end of his career, he would start maybe a year and a half before the election, and he would walk every door in the city.
That's where you get it from.
Yeah, and so it's an addiction. So once you're indoctrinated into it, in the beginning it wasn't a lot of fun because as a kid you didn't want to knock on a bunch of strangers' doors and your dad's saying this and that, and maybe sometimes it's hot or it's cold, or sometimes people, their dogs outside, whatever the situation is, right?
Did your father have like a joke about knocking on doors?
He did. He had a great joke. You
gotta tell him. You gotta tell him.
One time on the fence, it said no trespassing, and my dad's getting ready to enter. I said, Dad, didn't you see the sign? It says no trespassing. He said, Tim, that is an invitation to knock on the door. And that's exactly what we did. And it's funny, I just did that this evening. I knocked on someone's door, and they really went out of their way to have no trespassing on a fence. Once we got through the fence, then there was like another iron cage around the door. Then once you open that up, it said in big letters, no trespassing.
Did they have a guard dog?
They said they had a dog, but I didn't see the dog anywhere, so I'm getting ready. I don't know what's going to happen. And I knocked on the door, and thank goodness they were supporters.
Okay.
Because
there you go.
Had I been, were they not supporters, maybe they would have been really upset that I was there. But in most cases, when you tell them who you are, sometimes in the beginning, they give you a look, and it's not a good look. But then afterwards, they know who you are, then they're happy to see you.
Have you ever knocked on the door and it wasn't a supporter?
Oh, absolutely. Even tonight, I asked someone tonight if they had, they told me they had already voted, which was probably on that person's, because I said, don't forget to vote March 3rd. She goes, oh, we've already voted. And I said, oh my goodness gracious. Did I get your vote?
Yeah, right.
And she said, we'll see.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
It's like, wow, let me twiddle,
Really?
let me twiddle my thumbs on that one.
We'll
and
see.
So I said, thank you very much, and went on to the next. But I had many more people who said that they had voted, and they said, I supported you, so you don't
that's
have to have me. Yeah, so that's, and it just goes with the territory.
Yeah. So how did you get into politics?
Well, it's interesting that the introduction came naturally from my dad. My dad, being involved, and my mom were very involved in the 1960s, the latter part of the 1960s and early 70s in national politics. A lot was going on then. It was a very tumultuous, a lot of upheaval in the country.
Right.
And my parents were idealists, and they had a young family of 4 kids by that time. Eventually, they had 2 more, and they along with people that they associated with were very determined to make the country a better place. So they're very active, very politically engaged, and that's how it started. So as an example, if they were involved with someone's campaign, we would, and I can't remember, when that started, when the first campaign, it was probably in the early 60s, they were involved in a measure that would have allowed discrimination in housing.
Oh, wow.
And so they, of course, were opposed to that. And in fact, that actually passed in the state of California, but the California State Supreme Court overturned it because it was obviously it was discriminatory. And that was the first thing. I don't know if that was like Prop 14, if that's what that was. I can't remember Prop A. I can't remember Prop 1, Proposition 1A. I can't remember what the proposition was, but that's my first memory of them being involved in something. And then it was just a succession of campaigns and elections. And so my brothers and sisters and I spent a lot of time in the evenings after school in these campaign headquarters. And so that was my introduction and into politics. And then eventually that led to me studying political science and history, so I was very interested in school.
Why would you choose, a public service when every decision you make is so scrutinized?
Well, I think public service, first and foremost, is a calling. So no matter whether the decisions you make are scrutinized or not. Look, I was a 25-year high school teacher, and I tell everybody that there's nothing, when people say, wait a minute, you're scrutinized for the decisions you make. People criticize you. They even come up to the council meetings and they say sometimes very unpleasant things. How do you get through that? How do you handle that? And I just tell them, I said, look, when you've been a high school teacher 25 years and you're dealing with students and what they tell you, I said, what the public tells you is nothing compared to what students will tell you. So I said, that allows you to get through it.
Okay. So what would you say would be your top priorities if elected?
Well, my top priority as mayor, when people ask me, Tim, what's your number one priority as mayor? If someone were to say, can you tell me in a sentence what it is that you want to accomplish? And my number one goal as mayor has been to create middle-class opportunities for all the residents of the city. As you know, Oxnard has actually a very large middle class, a very, also large upper middle class, even upper class, but also has a very large lower class. And most of those are migrant farm workers in particular. And so my goal is to, whether it's through teaching or it's through public service with serving in the city, is to create opportunities for people to become middle class. And so it has a lot to do with economic development.
Okay. And do you have a strategy for economic development that you have in place?
Well, actually, just most recently, it's kind of come into focus. So I've been mayor for 7 years, and in the first at least 6 of the 7 years, my focus has been focused on not only attracting new employers to the city, but allowing or creating conditions in the city so that the existing employers can actually expand, so that we shouldn't inhibit companies expanding. We should find every way we can to allow them or enable them to expand. So my particular focus has been on a very large empty it's now being used for agriculture. It's off the 101. It's called Del Norte Boulevard, and there is several hundred acres of what's called Sakioka Farms, and that is slated that's the last commercial industrial parcel left in the city that hasn't been developed. And so I've been particularly focused on attracting new economy jobs and high-tech, biotech, and medical research. Right. And with the new city manager that we have, Alexander Nguyen, he has also worked with me, and has been more his focus on connecting job training with the community colleges with the existing needs of employers. So we actually just recently had a summit at Oxnard College, and we took about 10 of the largest employers of the city, gave them a survey, tried to identify what their needs were, and ironically enough, many of them have needs that they cannot find the skill set that students need to have to work for them. And so the particular focus and why we're at Oxnard College is that the colleges then would be offering those specific either certificates or classes or training that will enable younger people to get those jobs.
Yeah. Right. So, and there are certain jobs that you want them to go into, like the medical field, anything to do with any type of computers, or those are the type of jobs that are booming right now. So, is that something you're focused on?
Absolutely. Well, it's said that in the next 30 years that half of all the existing jobs will not exist. And so when we say 21st century jobs, what are those jobs? And, a lot of it has to do with mechanization, has to do with technology, has to do with robotics, has to do with so many different things. So I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not the guy that has the vision necessarily about what all those future careers are going to be. But it's important that, especially community colleges, like Oxnard College or Ventura or Moore Park College, that they're offering courses in those areas where those futuristic jobs will be.
That's great. That's
Now,
great.
you mentioned, do you have some, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, shoot, I'm fine.
They're fighting for questions.
No, I just want to make sure because I don't want to overtalk anyone. So you mentioned something that I actually looked into. I know here in the Ventura County, there's over 500,000 registered voters.
Okay.
So 100,000 of those are non-affiliate. How do you feel you can swing those non-affiliate voters your way?
Well, when you're in city government and county government, thank goodness it's nonpartisan. So has nothing to do with political parties. And that is a wonderful thing. And the reason why that's wonderful is we see what's happening in other parts of the country, even sometimes in state capitals like in Sacramento, when there's the partisanship. Partisanship in itself is not bad. But when political parties can't come together and get things done, then it's not positive. And so one of the great things I like about serving in city government and then also in county government is it has nothing to do with political parties.
That's good.
Perfect.
Very
Okay. I wanted to ask that because I wasn't sure. And I was like, man. Now, another thing, too, is the race. I know we're coming down to crunch time.
Okay.
March 3rd, Tuesday.
Are you feeling good about it, though?
I always feel good because when I say I always feel good, always is an absolute term. I would say that as long as I worked hard and I've put my heart and soul into something, then no matter what the outcome is, I feel good about it. And no one can predict what the outcome is going to be. But my goal is to, because there are 5 candidates running, my goal is to be one of the 2 top finishers, because if no candidate gets over 50%, then the 2 top finishers will have a runoff in November.
Wow.
So that's really what the goal is. And naturally, everybody wants to come in first place. I'm 4th on the ballot, but I tell people when I go to their door, I'm listed 4th on the ballot, but I don't want to come in 4th. I want to come in first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Did you have that question, though?
Yeah, that was a great question. Now, that was perfect. That's what I actually wanted to know. Now, another thing too that I was, wanting to ask you was, with your dad being such a prominent figure, did you feel any pressure going into a field that he was involved in? Did you feel like, oh man, my dad was here, I really got to represent for the family name and really do just as good as he did? Was there pressure?
If he's Michael Jordan, you're Michael Jordan's son. Do you?
Well,
feel like
that's a great parallel. And if I could play basketball like Michael Jordan, I wouldn't
even be doing this.
I might not be in public service. I'd be in basketball. But actually, it was no. The answer to that question is, and what was actually more difficult was being a son of someone who was in this position, because sometimes you felt, or one would feel, or I would feel, that maybe you'd be scrutinized maybe a little bit extra or more, and you had to live up to certain expectations. And I don't think it would be any different than if someone's dad or mom or a police chief or a minister or some other important position, right? A doctor in town or something, that everybody knows who you are. And so that was more challenging, rather than when I ran for public office the first time. I was 30 years old, and I ran for the Community College Board of Trustees, so for the 3 junior colleges, the Ventura County Community College District. And when I ran for that position, I ran because I felt moved by my community college experience, and I felt that the community colleges were, if they could do for me what I thought they could do for others, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Right.
And unfortunately, I didn't win, but actually losing isn't always a bad thing.
No, it's
and
not.
it teaches you a lot, right?
Well, speaking of losing, I have a question that is type of a lose question. What problem in Oxnard do you believe? We doing selfies, right? We're
going to do some pictures. All right, we're doing some pictures. Okay,
that's perfect.
I'm going to be in there. Next.
Now this is golden. No one has ever took a picture.
While we're asking questions,
Middle question. That is
now you guys are on the spot.
That is classic.
I want to make sure we get this on.
Bravo, sir. That was
awesome.
That was amazing. So, speaking of this difficult question, what is the biggest problem that you see that Oxnard has that may be the hardest to overcome? That may take some time.
Well, I would have said, I'll answer that question. That's homelessness right now, and I would say prior to that, a lot of the problems in Oxnard are associated with poverty. So when there's gang activity in the city, of course. There are homicides in the city. Any time there's one homicide, that's unacceptable.
Right.
And then there's not as high of academic achievement in the schools. So there's a lot of aspects that are directly related to poverty. And we could say that homelessness, in some instances, has very much to do with poverty, because some of those that are homeless aren't suffering from mental illness. They're not addicted to alcohol or drugs. And they're not physically handicapped. They might be 1 or 2 paychecks away from being evicted from an apartment, and they find themselves living in a car, right?
So, yeah.
Those are individuals that need housing. So I'd say right now,
Do we have anything in development for people like that?
well, Oxnard has about 700 homeless, and it's, that number fluctuates, but 700. And 100 approximately of the 700 are being housed in a shelter right now. Ventura has a similar number. So Oxnard and Ventura have 2/3 of all the county's homeless. And so there's about 1,600 homeless in the county.
That's a lot.
So yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot.
So
I
the
actually thought
challenge
it would be more.
That's right. Well, the challenge is that if you are housing 100 and then 600 aren't being housed, then the immediate question is, well, what's your plan to house
Right.
those other 600?
Right.
Well, the plan is you need more money to do that, right? And just to convey a very direct message to the audience, and that is that there are all kinds that are homeless. And one of the things that's unfortunately very pervasive in talk radio, especially AM talk radio, is the idea that, and I don't want to exaggerate when I say this, but that the overwhelming majority of people that are homeless want to be homeless, and that if the city if the city has a homeless problem, it's because they're inviting people to their city to offer services. So if you offer services, if you try to help people, that's the whole purpose of government, is that you want to create a higher life standard of living for people. You want to create public policies that the populace at large is
Right.
going to benefit from. So you're constantly focused on how you can improve people's lives and improve society. And it's no different with the homeless, right?
Right.
And so there are people that are service resistant, and they are the most difficult people to deal with. There are people who simply don't want help, or if you try to get them help. But to portray the majority of people that are homeless that way, I think is unfair or not true. So it is a real challenge when I'm asked that question. How do you house those other people? What are you going to? How do you help them?
Wouldn't it help if I was reading about like the city of Oxnard? They would spend about 50% of the money to the pension for people that were in the union and things like that. And that was just it was a high amount of money that was coming out.
Well, I happen to be the chairman of the Governance and Finance Committee, and the pension issue has been actually one of real interest of mine, and I think anybody in a similar position at any other city, and just people that are elected leaders, all cities in the state of California face real challenges when it comes to public pensions. And just to convey another message very directly about that is that this past year, Oxnard had, our budget was $141 million. And of that $141 million, $34 million was paid by the city to CalPERS, which is the Public Employee Retirement System. So $34 million, $14 million were regular payments that normally you pay each year to cover the pensions, and $20 million of those payments, for a total of 34, were paying on the fact that the pension system is underfunded. And so one of the things that has been a challenge and definitely has caused a financial strain is that when the pension system doesn't have enough money in it to provide for those payments, and that is called, it's an unfunded liability, then it's up to local governments and even county governments to pay extra each year to make sure that eventually over time it gets to the goal of 100% or 95% or whatever that might be. And so Oxnard's in a dilemma that many cities, and in fact most cities in the state of California, are in a very similar situation. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Oxnard's situation is unique. I would just say it's pervasive, that local governments do have these public pension challenges.
Wow. Okay. Now I want to get to know more of Tim.
Yes.
Whenever you are relaxing
That's
and
what I
you
was
chilling
gonna
out
ask.
and you letting your hair hang out, who are you listening to as a musical artist?
Oh, Well, I'm kind of steeped, in the past. I think with a lot of music, and it's funny. I don't spend enough time really listening to enough modern artists. So we
go old school too. So
Who's your
whoever your
favorite
favorite is
artist?
might be mine.
I'm all over the map because I like all music for the most
Okay.
part. I mean, sometimes I like country western. I like rock and roll.
Toby Keith.
I like funk. I like R&B.
jazz?
I love jazz. I like all music.
So I'll help you out. If you were to make an electoral playlist,
Yeah.
what would we find on it?
Well, right here on my Apple
here we go.
playlist.
Let's
Here
go.
we go.
This is breaking news.
I'm gonna read it right now.
Let's go.
So let me tell you the artist right now.
The
Someone's
artist
gonna
is
say.
Junior Leto.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. I have on here Blanco White,
Okay.
White.
Bootsy Collins,
Bootsy.
Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
Yes, the boss.
Let's see. I have James Hersey. James Hersey and Blanco White. My daughter, who's 29, she loves those two artists, and every time I get in her car, she's playing those. I said, "Who are those?" And she told me, and so I put them on.
Nice.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
We're gonna listen to Blanco White.
All right.
We will.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Led Zeppelin, Michael Jackson,
yeah.
Okay.
Rod Stewart. I mean, Roy Orbison. I mean, it goes on. and
So
on.
you,
Roy
you have a
Orbison.
great
Yeah.
palette.
Yes.
Right.
Right, you
A
do.
great
Right.
palette. Okay.
Right.
Oh,
So,
right.
okay, well, you have a question about.
Yes, I was gonna ask what is a day in the life of a mayor? What does that consist of? What are some of your favorite hobbies, activities?
And if you have none, it's fine.
That's right. Well, first of all, I think a favorite day of at least mine as mayor is when everything goes smoothly, right?
There you go.
And
I
so
like that.
The
and
perfect
so-
day.
The perfect day. Now today, for a variety of reasons, was not a perfect day, but most days go really, really well and they run really smoothly. And so it's a whole host of things, and a lot of it is people calling. They want something. They want you to do something. They're advocating that you do something. They want your attention for whatever it is that. And it's amazing sometimes. You'll get someone on the phone, and I'll call them back. I try to call them all back personally. If not, maybe my secretary will call them back. And sometimes somebody will get on the phone. They'll just start filling you in with hundreds and hundreds of details.
Wow.
And I'll listen a little bit there, and I'll just say, time out. Don't be mad at me about this, but listen, I can't get so far into the weeds on this. If you had to say in one sentence or two sentences, what is it that you want me to do, then sometimes I'll get
That's
that.
how busy you are.
Well,
yeah.
well, sometimes, and not always. And so I'll get that, and I'll say, look, I'm going to have somebody call you back, and we're going to work on this until we can get this done. But sometimes the requests, they're all over the map. So those
So follow up.
Yeah, and that's like constituent requests, right? I would say. So a good part of any mayor's day is our fulfilling constituent requests. A lot of it is ceremonial, where people, there's as an example, there's a luxury senior center, senior living facility that just opened at River Park, and it's called Oakmont. And it was amazing. That was yesterday, and so they always want the mayor there for those grand openings, right? And so there's a ceremonial side of being mayor. Then there's like every Tuesday, every other Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Well, you wish it were Taco Tuesday, and it might seem like it. Maybe we're throwing tacos at each other, and that's at the city council meetings. So I actually run the city council meeting, and in most cases that goes really well. And then other times, the issues are weighty or they're controversial or who knows what, and so sometimes it's very difficult, and you might be there 5, 6, 7 hours doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm one of these guys that even now that I have to stand up all the time because I can't sit too long.
That's fine.
okay. That's okay.
So I got to sit down,
That's
and then I
okay.
got to stand up and
You
sit
know,
down.
I definitely like your voicemail because I gave you a call, and I love how your voicemail said, "Do not leave a message.
You're right.
Do not leave a message.
Right. Text me.
Send me a text right now.
Send me a
Do
text.
not leave a message.
Right, because I would get messages and they go on 10 minutes.
Yeah. Who would
And
leave
when
a-
when I called, I was like,
know.
it makes sense. You have to be bombarded with
Right,
so many.
right. And then I'll say, and if you can't text, then call this number.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a live voice. right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
With such a busy lifestyle, how or what would you suggest on how to keep balance between your busy lifestyle and your personal life?
Don't have a personal life.
Is that tough with your daughters? You have 3 daughters, right?
I have 3 daughters. I have 2 that are at home. One lives down in Orange County. So she's out of the house and in a great business and doing really well.
This one with the dogs.
Well, you're right. She owns a dog hotel, right,
Nice.
with her spouse. And what's really interesting is then the two others are in college. One's going to college here locally. The other one's finishing college up in Northern California. And certainly, I happen to be a single parent. Unfortunately, my wife passed away 4.5 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Her name was
Julie, right? And so trying to juggle those balls, some of those balls, is just thank goodness that the kids are their age, because if they were younger, I don't know what I would have done. You know, but it's a challenge because you feel like you're always running behind, just like I was this evening for this interview.
Oh, no, you are A-okay.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to get into is kind of back to the fun stuff. I've got some facts here. We're going to do a little segment called Francois Facts.
Okay.
And I'm sure you're going to be aware of some of these things that happen.
Okay.
Let's hope.
All right. So, on this day, it is February 28th,
day.
2020. So we're gonna get into some fun facts, Francois facts.
Okay.
So on this day in 1984, Michael Jackson won 7 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, Record of the Year, Best Rock Vocal Performance for Beat It, and the Album of the Year was Thriller. So that was great. And then George Michael, which I know you're familiar with George Michael, which was part of the group Wham.
Okay.
Announced that he was officially leaving Wham on this day in 1986.
Okay.
So those are some Francois facts for you.
Oh, thank you.
And,
thank God you didn't quiz me on it.
yeah, no problem.
I seen him looking like, oh, what are you about to ask me?
When you were saying all the stuff about Michael Jackson, I kept
You're like,
thinking
okay.
Thriller.
He like keeping mental notes.
Yeah, I got, bump. I got it right. Okay.
Okay, so
Thank
any other questions for Tim?
No, I'm
Wow.
good.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the
Yes.
platform.
Yes.
You know,
Thank you.
we are wishing you the best.
Thank you.
I mean, you knocking on those doors said a lot to me.
You're always family
Right,
here at
that's
Luminary
awesome.
Sounds.
Thank you very
we
much.
appreciate
We did
you.
our research, and before we go, I did see that. Was that a debate that happened a few months ago? It was with yourself, another gentleman, and
Yeah, so we had 5 forums. They call them forums rather than
yes,
debates.
the forums. Okay.
So a debate would be more like you're squaring off with people, and you'll say something, and then somebody will offer a counter argument, then somebody gets a rebuttal back, and so that's more of a debate format. So what we had were 5 forums, and those forums were sponsored by a variety of entities, and it's the candidates are asked questions. In most cases, the candidates don't know what the questions are, and I actually really like that when you don't really know what the questions are, that you have to think quickly off your feet. And so we had 5 of those, and now that's
it was
over
interesting. I watched it. It was pretty interesting.
Oh,
I
great.
seen you stand on a chair at one point in time.
Yes, and I'm trying to think what that was all about. But I was probably trying to be.
She asked everyone to stand up because I guess they couldn't see everyone that was sitting down.
Right.
So then you stood up on the chair, and I was like, I
okay,
like that guy.
Right. Well,
I like that guy. His
I wanna
personality.
I want to make sure everybody can see me.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I got one last question for you. So
Yes.
on Tuesday, March the 3rd, where can people go
Well,
to make sure they get their votes in and everything like that?
so 80% of all the voters that will vote, or 75%, 3/4 of all the voters that will vote March 3rd, I believe in Ventura County, are permanent absentee voters. So they
Okay.
get their ballots mailed to them, and then they will take those ballots, and then the postage is prepaid, and they just drop them in the mailbox, or the mailman will take them away. In some instances, people might not mail their ballot, but yet they've marked it, and so they'll just take it to their polling station and they'll drop it off. And so everyone has a polling station, and in the voter guide that gives information about the candidates and the measures that voters are facing, it will always have printed on the back where the polling place is for that voter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And you could always go, like in Oxnard on the 4th floor, you could drop ballots off there. The county clerk's office, a lot of people sometimes they will go to the county clerk's office, elections division.
Got it.
They'll wait in line, they'll even vote there.
And those are like the other 20%.
That's right. Yeah, 20% of the people,
Yeah.
for the most part, then vote on election day.
Got it.
And the other,
Is there a website that they can go to?
I think it's Ventura.org or VenturaElections.org.
Do you have your own personal website?
I have my own. Thank you for mentioning that. I love
Yes.
putting it. So mine is Tim, Tim, the number 4, supervisor.com. Tim4supervisor.com.
And we're gonna have it really big right here. We always put it right here.
I'll see it right there, and you could volunteer, you could donate, you could send me a comment, whatever. I have a video on there that talks actually a little bit about my history as a in my family in Ventura County and how I actually got involved in politics and my family.
Perfect.
So
Definitely
tune in on that anytime. So once again, Tim4supervisor.com.
Absolutely.
That's
so we want to
awesome.
say thank you for coming on the
Yes,
show.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
It's been a
much.
pleasure. We wish you luck.
Thank you.
On March the 3rd. And I am your musical artist, Junior Leto.
I'm your musical enthusiast, Francois the Great.
And creative fanatic, Kate Don't Play.
We out of here.
Bye.
Wow.
There you go.
So leave these on so we'll get a selfie with these
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
Absolutely.
I
Let's do
love
this.
selfies. All right.
too.
Get
There
in
we
here,
go.
Francois.
Wait a minute, Francois. Let's. Okay, here we go. All right. There it is. And
All right.
again, got it.
That's
Thank you, guys.
perfect.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you have to say-